Welcome to another Learning to Fly with Nikki, Batgirl D'Angelo. Today I decided to do a few touch and goes and then some approach to landing and departure stalls. The reason for this was made apparent, or I should say, the reason for this is because of the shitty landings that I've had the last two episodes. Now, I don't know if I am fully aware of the flight model of this aircraft in real life. I do remember flying it. I've gone through my logbook. I see the hours that I have in it, about an hour and a half total. And I feel like this plane was a lot simpler to fly. In fact, it is. This is a very forgiving aircraft, and that's why it's such a great trainer. On my landings, what I was finding is that in that slow flight configuration, or not slow flight, but approach to landing configuration, as I'm getting over the numbers and I'm flaring it, instead of bleeding off the vertical descent rate or bleeding off my descent rate, as I pull back, my descent rate was actually going up. Now that is a problem for this game because it's very important to understand how this aircraft works. How does it fly? Before you actually solo, before you actually start to attempt landing on your own or with the instructor should have taken you up to do approach to landing stalls and departure stalls. I have no idea if that's how they still train. If it isn't, I don't know if that's exactly the safest thing to do. An aircraft, when it stalls, is going to react differently. Every aircraft, every bump, every piece of dirt, every bird shit on that wing affects airflow over that wing. So you really want to know how the aircraft that you're flying will stall. And sometimes in a brand new aircraft, you're going to stall that aircraft and it's going to be a very sharp nose drop and no wing rotation at all, like that. No wing rotation. It's just going to drop the nose, and then all you have to do is just let your controls go to neutral, add full power, and go. On a departure stall, it's a little bit harder because you have all that torque from the engine, and you might just wing over and go into a spin. So you need to be aware of these things, and you need to know how to react to them. So what I did on this particular flight, this is free flight mode, because you have to get 3 hours of free flight in this game. I decided instead of flying from A to B like I'll do in the next episode, that I should do the things that I would be doing if I was a real person. Well, I am a real person, but if in real life I was going for my private pilot's license or light aircraft pilot's license, which I think is something they have added since I had actually gone for mine. So what I'm doing is pattern work. Now I'm not going to be exactly perfect on the pattern work here because in real life when I'm at McCollum, I know where my visual landmarks are to make my turns. And that's something that you have to file away in that little file cabinet in your head when you're flying, is that instead of constantly looking at the runway and everything else, get yourself some visual aids, some landmarks that you know. When I'm over this house with this pool, I turn on base. When I'm over this house or this store or this road, I turn on final. And these are things that I know and I have to learn in this sim, but I'm not sure if the autogen scenery is going to be the same every single time I come out here. And that is probably something I'm going to have to look at over time. I'm not even sure if you could add your own scenery. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to do some pattern work. And I'm not going to let you agonize through me doing about 3 or 4 touch and goes before I finally say, you know what? This is not working for me. I need to know how this aircraft really handles. So what I do is I take it off up to 5,000 feet and then 6,000 feet. 5,000 feet for my approach to landing stalls and then 6,000 feet just in case I get this thing into a spin. I take it up to 6,000 feet and start doing some departure stalls. So I have realism set on this, and I did not break out my pedals yet, but I am using the rudder on the X-55. Now this is what I'm saying. This is the first pattern work I'm doing, so I'm not really lining up this aircraft very well. I made my turn just a little bit sewn, so I had to shallow out my turn. Trying to look at it and see how the flaps are coming down. Cool. Alright, so this is us just a little bit off angle on final. We're a little bit high, thus the white lights. So I'm going to chalk it back. I'm going to add more flaps. There goes the nose coming up from the flaps, and I'm going to try to get it back on. The rudder doesn't really work like a rudder in real life at this point. I would get a little bit more yaw out of it, but I felt like I was going to put it into a different maneuver. So I'm maintaining about 80, 90 knots over here. So what I want to do, if you look, my vertical descent rate is right around, oh boy, it's right around 8, there it is, 500. So I'm going to try to keep this and squeak it on the runway. So we're going to land a little bit long. This was a horrible touch and go. I'm going to let you see 2 of them. Now watch the vertical speed indicator. Watch it. We haven't stalled, we haven't stalled, we haven't stalled, I haven't stalled, we're still holding off, and boom. That was a perfect landing. That's the way that I want to hit it every single time. So I clean up the aircraft, and I get it back into the air. And this is when I realize I have left the flaps up, and I'm sitting over here almost putting myself into a stall. And I'm going to figure it out any second now and fix the flap issue and then go around for another landing. Now, I have done so many of these touch and goes there. See, I just saw that my flaps were up. I mean down. So I'm going to raise the flaps and I'm going to start gaining that speed rather quickly. So I've done many touch and goes at many different airfields in my life. And the reason is to know how that aircraft lands. Every time that I get checked out in an aircraft, I make sure I get well, not a large number, but I make sure I spend time learning how that aircraft flies. In slow flight, in steep turns, in standard rate turns, I make sure that I do all of this. My biggest issue with this sim is that I'm not 100% confident in the flight model at this point. Maybe I will be later on. Maybe I need to go get one of my friends that has a Super Cub, let him take me up and let me fly it and see how it works. But I don't think that is in the cards right now, so I'm going to have to rely on Piper and Dovetail Games. I only imagine that Piper put their name on this flight model because their name's all over the sim, and you have to license that, and I can't imagine that they would let a company destroy their name with a bad flight model on an aircraft that bears their name and their likeness. Alright, so here we are, just about midfield. Starting to get my bearings. I'm crossing over 41. This is 41 over here. It runs right along one of the edges of the fields. It's actually not as close. Well, it's kind of not as close as it seems. I'm going to have to look at its placement again. Alright, so not bad. Yeah, it's probably right about there. There's also a police precinct and a couple of buildings, lots of commercial buildings, I should say, in this area. So let's take it back. Good. We should begin our turn right now because it's actually when the numbers are 45 degrees off your shoulder, not the threshold, and that's one of the things I keep doing wrong here. Alright, so we're going to let the nose drop. This time I'm going to maintain 70. I'm going to try to be a little bit more precise with my maneuvers. Roll back out. Perfect, perfect. Alright. Don't turn now. This is not going to be a good one. I turned a little bit early. I should have turned just about another 10 seconds later. So what you're going to see is I'm going to be a little bit far. See, I was far to the right. It's okay though. Nobody's testing me today, except for me. I hold myself to a higher standard than most people would hold themselves to. Again, a little bit high because I'm turning just a little bit late. Well, I should be low if I'm turning late, so maybe I am turning just in time. Alright, so you see I'm coming in a little bit slower this time, around 60, 65, 70 knots. Alright, got all those flaps in. Now look at my descent rate. It's 1,000 feet a minute right now. Okay, 1,000 feet a minute. Let's watch how it goes. Alright. We have the field made. Let's chalk back the throttle just a little bit. Let's start that flare out. 500 feet a minute. Keep that flare coming. Oh, we're coming over the numbers. Is it going to be a good one? And we're lifting up, and perfect. That is a perfect landing. So I got that down. So what happened now was I decided that I was going to go back up and I was going to go do some stalls. Let's go and jump to that part at this time. So way back when I started flying flight simulators, there were force feedback joysticks and force feedback yokes and all sorts of things, and they tried to model the shake that you will get in an aircraft, some aircraft, when it stalls. This thing stalls like one of the newer aircraft made out of carbon fiber. I mean, the ones that don't get dents and stuff in the wing. So we've set up for slow flight, trying to maintain that altitude, holding the nose, continuously adding pitch to try to hold our altitude, pulling the throttle all the way back, trying to hold that altitude, and the nose just drops. No shake, no shudder, no nothing. It just drops. Alright, so I learned something here. I learned that the flight model is modeling a stall as an absolute speed, which that's okay. But it's not modeling the way that the planes stall for real. Now when we get into the Cherokee 180, I'm going to need to see if it does the controls get real mushy and the wings kind of wobble a little bit, and then when it stalls, it wings over just a little bit. Okay, it's a low wing, that's what happens. Wings over just a little bit, you let go of the controls or move them to neutral, add full throttle, you come right out, just like you did here. This was a good example of a flight model that models absolutes. I learned something here, so I'm not upset. I'm not going to say this is bad. It just does things weird. So now what we're doing is a departure stall. And where is it? Ooh, there it goes. So I brought the aircraft up to 6,000 feet, and I decided that I was going to try those departure stalls just a little bit more. The reason why I went up to 6,000 feet is that I noticed the wing drop before, but I didn't realize that it was me not putting enough rudder in. I didn't want to have this spin and have to deal with recovering a spin with never doing that in this particular aircraft. Not that it would be hard. Recovering a spin is just a procedure, and it's essentially controls to neutral, chalk the throttle back, opposite rudder, gain control, pull out, add full power, and gain positive climb. Alright, so let's see how we're doing here. So it likes to drop that nose. So that was a little bit more realistic to a stall that I would have in a Cessna 172. Alright, I'm confident. I know what this plane is doing, and I think I'm going to be able to fly it better. Now this is something that I am going to fault this program for. Without teaching this before solo flight, which with giving all these lessons to people, like those first 4 or 5 lessons, and then saying go out and fly, I think it's detracting from what its actual goal should be, which is to train people how to fly a flight sim. Flight school should be a flight school for flying flight sims. And I'm hoping that maybe they'll take this advice and change things just a little bit. You can't expect people to go out and fly without learning some more of the basics. And although most gamers today have no patience for lengthening the time it takes to get into being able to do the fun parts of a game, this is a trainer. It's here to train us how to play, so the people buying this and using this are obviously dedicated to the sim genre. At least I would hope so. Alright, let's go back to landing and close this one out. So I've descended back to pattern altitude. I'm coming into the downwind leg on a just about a 45-degree crossing the field. Oh god, I'm breaking so many regulations here, but we're going to cross the field just about at the takeoff point for most of the aircraft, and then we're going to turn onto downwind, base, and then final. So as I'm going through these maneuvers, I'm going to close this one out. What was the purpose of today's video? Today's video is to show you the things that I do when I fly. This game or simulator or trainer is a lot better than I make it sound in my videos. All I'm trying to do is to validate the things that they're teaching in here to people that have never flown a flight sim before, because that's who this game is marketed towards. I love flight sims. I love flying. After I played this game, I went into IL-2 and I started flying around in the Yaks and the LAVs and the Messerschmitts, and you know, you have to know how to fly to play that type of flight sim. So this was definitely instrumental in it. You don't just pull back on the stick real fast. When you're in a real aircraft, you will stall, you will break the aircraft, you will over G, you'll do something stupid. So whatever aircraft you fly, you have to know the characteristics, and that's what I did with some of the time that I spent in that sim. I'd take up each airplane, fly it around, see how it handles, see how it stalls, see how it spins, see how you can get out of a spin, and those are the things that I did. So is this a sim that people should purchase if they want to get into flight sims? Well, at $15, it's definitely worth the money. It's not a $200, $500, or $1,000 training system to teach you how to fly in real life. It's a $15 game to get you comfortable with flying in a flight sim environment. I have not finished the whole game yet, or the whole learning track. When I'm done, I'll give another evaluation, but at this particular point, which is right up to the time that you have to gain 3 hours for your light aircraft pilot's license, I'd say it does a fair job and definitely worth the $15 investment if you want to learn how to fly in flight sims. And of course, I learned nothing from my first 2 pattern works over here, as I totally miss my turn onto final. Or too early, I don't miss it. I totally turned too early, but better too early than too late, right? That's not always the case, folks. So let's see how badly I botched this landing after going out and finding how this aircraft handles. So let's watch. I'm leaving the instrument panel open so people can see what I'm doing. Coming in. Nose is almost perfectly on. Of course, there's no weather being modeled here. I wish they would let live weather into this game. Yeah, we're coming in a little bit fast. Well, not fast, a little bit steep. Alright, so this one's going to be a hard one, people. I'm telling you, this one's going to be a slam into the ground. Alright, here we go. We're going to stall it right above the runway. Watch. Watch how bad I do this. Nope. See, it was a perfect landing. I got you guys. It was a little bit off center, but that was a nice, sweet landing in this aircraft. I hope this has helped those of you that want to get into the flight sim genre. I think that this is something that you need to learn how to do each time you buy a brand new aircraft, whether it be in Flight Simulator, X-Plane, or in the future games that come out. Well, folks, I'm going to leave you with that, and the next flight will be a short hop up to Cherokee County Airport. Remember, if there's a place you want me to fly to, please put it in the comment section below. And with that said, you all be safe out there, and I'll talk to you soon.